Minority Leader, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. It's indeed a pleasure once more to join this debate in what I would describe as a most relevant and necessary discussion in Tobago at this time. Let me also congratulate Minority Councillor, Mrs. Petal Daniel Benoit, for tabling this motion today, because given what we have been seeing playing out in the public space over the last month or so, where we are seeing a number of reports dealing with child abuse and child care, and of course we continue to see the challenges that we as a nation are facing when it comes to domestic violence. This tells me this is a minority council that is well in touch and well in line with what really matters to the people, not just of Tobago, but of Trinidad and Tobago, and I wish to congratulate my colleague. Madam Presiding Officer, my colleague from Boku would have indicated that this motion, he described it as late, and he seemed to suggest that it's irrelevant. And it tells me how out of touch this current administration is with what is really going on with our people here in Tobago. It tells me this gentleman is willing to call things or call the weather sunny when it is indeed raining, because this issue of domestic violence, this issue of child abuse is alive and well in our homes, in many homes, real in Tobago at this time. And therefore, we found it very critical that we bring this motion to the attention of the Tobago House of Assembly so that we can have rational discussions, we can have meaningful discussions as to how we address this issue, this scourge that is plaguing our island. And I don't know who the Assistant Secretary would have consulted with, but when you talk to the NGOs, when you talk to the stakeholders, the people who are providing care to persons, to victims, and the persons who are providing care in the Children's Authority and those other stakeholders, you would recognize how grave a situation we have on our hands at this time. So to dismiss this issue as irrelevant and as late and we have it under control, we don't have it under control, sir. This issue is one that requires more than simply policies. This issue is one that requires more than simply us playing lip service, us marching up and down the road. It requires us to get together as a people, get all the persons who are willing to make a difference. We need to get back into the schools. We need to get into the churches. We need to get into the communities. And it means that we need to refashion and rebrand. And we need to treat with our young men and our young girls. And we need to treat with our families. And we need to treat with our homes. And we need to treat with our Tobago people to ensure that violence is something we eradicate in this island, on this island. Madam Presiding Officer, it is in this context we brought this motion, because when you look at various reports, in fact, there was a report from Luke TT dated November 25th, 2021. And we have one of the persons, it's Ms. Corby, who is attached to the Gender-Based Violence Unit. And she's telling us that domestic violence in the country has reached a point where its incidence has been established as a national concern. Throughout the last 2 years, and with advent of COVID-19, there has been a steady increase in the number of persons provided with support by domestic violence unit. She went as far as to break it down for us, and she said in 2020, over 899 people, these being 649 females, 205 males, were provided with support via the victim and the victim and gender-based unit. While for this year, which was 2021, 858 people were assisted, 669 females and 188 males. And what this tells us is that the issue of domestic violence, the issue of intimate violence, is not only restricted to women. It is a national issue that affects both men as much as it affects women. It tells us that as a society, we need to get into the homes where the issues are live and well. I was speaking to one NGO provider, and in the conversation, I was told that basically there are situations that would happen in the home. So when you have broken homes where domestic violence would have been a situation that the children would have experienced. That affects the child. And when that affects the child goes into school. And when that child is faced with incidents of whether it be someone perhaps might bully, might trouble them, they just don't know how to deal with conflict. And we are seeing that issue transcending from the home into the schools. We are seeing fights all over social media, and that tells us that something is wrong. And we need to get the kind of intervention, we need to sit down and understand what is that thing that is wrong and treat with it. And I heard my colleague explain and discuss the kind of systems we already have. And you're speaking to the converted, because of course, for the past administration, of course, and Councillor Daniel Benoit mentioned it, would have put some systems, would have put some things in place, but we are not, we recognize that there are gaps. And it is for this reason, while we condemn these acts of violence, while we condemn the acts of the perpetrators, we are saying we must not give up on them. We are saying, let us look at where the gaps lies, and let us see how we can have these issues resolved to the benefit of both the victim as well as the perpetrator. There are situations where, when you look at this whole issue of gender-based violence, and when you look at how we treat with the victims, I know for a fact there are persons who stay in abusive relationship because they just don't know where to turn. They just don't know where to go. They may apply for a grant, they might apply for the rental assistance, but they may just not qualify. And we do not yet have the type of support, the domestic violence shelters and those kind of things. And even if we have them, they are not enough, they are not sufficient to really take in victims of domestic violence. This is one of the things we'd want to posit as something we should do post-haste, is to work with the NGOs, persons like Ms. Mars and they who deal with gender-based violence, and have available or construct, if we can, a shelter specific to persons facing domestic violence. We are saying we have issues with child abuse. There are persons in our system who, for one reason or the other, will perpetrate acts against children that are of the most heinous nature. And we condemn those persons, but we should not leave them in the dark, because it means that most times these persons have some kind of mental challenge that they either suppress, that has been suppressed over a period of time. It is very difficult, and I could share with you because I know of persons who have mental challenges and need to see a therapist. It is very difficult to get that kind of support in a timely basis, even now. So yes, the division may have some therapeutic counselors, but how many are they? And when you look at how long it takes to access the service, sometimes even depending on the case, if you're a child, then you have to go through another, I think it's through the Division of Education and so. And if you are an adult, then you come through the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection. And perhaps maybe we'll look at where we streamline this service under one unit and have resourced in that unit adequate therapeutic counselors so that we can give persons the requisite support. I remember one time in the THA, we did have support for workers. And you could have access very discreetly and confidentially the service of going to a counselor, and you talk about whatever situation, could be domestic, could be on work, and so forth. But at some point, it becomes very costly to the THA, and that service would have had to be removed, I believe. But I'm saying coming out of this COVID-19 experience, this type of service is needed more than ever, because we have persons under pressure. Imagine, this administration is one that is sending home persons without no kind of support, no separation package, and you're sending home, in some cases, families. You're sending home husband and you're sending home wife. How you expect these persons to survive? These kind of issues can lead to domestic violence. Because when people are frustrated, when when they are unable to provide, this leads to conflict. So you are contributing to domestic violence at this time.
Minority Leader, you're out of order. Please get back to the topic, please, at hand.
We are talking about domestic violence.
Minority Leader, this is my house in case you forgot. Please get back to the topic at hand.
Madam Presiding Officer, I stand guided. Thank you. So, domestic violence. And I recognize that we have to be very guided in how we speak about domestic violence and those reasons and those situations that can foster domestic violence. I would have consulted with an expert in this matter, and we had the discussion very openly, and we are looking at some of the other strategies that can be adopted, and some of the things we discussed, because we looked at what are some of the strategies, that we can use in terms of assisting both victims and perpetrators of domestic violence, as well as child abuse. And it is suggested that the strategies adopted must be one of continuous and a continuum of care. And it must focus on the preventative, so your prevention. And it is important that we begin to develop and teach this in our primary school, all the way up. So we are saying that domestic violence and child abuse and those issues, the strategy should involve education and educating persons from as early as the primary schools all the way up to adulthood, so that we can create that environment that would allow persons to appreciate each other, appreciate how you treat with conflict, appreciate how you care for one another, how you relate with one another. And we are positing that this should really have the involvement of our education sector and the schools. We should also look around developing this in the homes, in the families. And we are not just simply saying that let us implement this strategy as a one-size-fits-all. But we are saying it's for us to understand our communities, for us to understand our families, and let us really do things that impact the homes. Let us get into the homes, because there are a lot of broken homes, a lot of broken men and women walking around. And when these broken men and women walk around, it is through these interactions that we end up with issues of violence, where we are losing our women at the hands of violent men, and where we are seeing our young girls especially being abused by some men that I would not want to really describe in this house. And we have some immediate actions that should be necessary when these things occur. We need the swift and immediate actions to be put in place. We need an immediate referral for mental health assessment, and this treatment should come forward, whether it be by the THA or a contracted firm. There should be no wait for all involved, both victim and perpetrators. We also need not to make the issue so much criminal. While we are not taking away from the fact that it is a crime, but we really should adopt a humanistic approach to this issue. We need to seek and understand the question why. Why is this happening? We need to have places, as I mentioned before, have places of safety for both persons should this happen. So we are not just proposing places of safety for the victim, but we also need to look at how we house and how we rehabilitate the perpetrators. And as mentioned before, we also need to have that robust divisional referral without the hassle. In the future, we need to have these programs sustained throughout the island at all levels. So yes, the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection should be that initiating frontline department, that frontline division. But at the same time, we really need an all-of-government approach to this situation that is domestic violence and child abuse. And we also ask the question, what are some of those prevailing conditions that foster these incidents of domestic violence and child abuse in our society? And we must admit, and we have to understand that there are horrible people living amongst us. With that being said, we have to understand emotions. We have to understand that there's a lack of willingness to understand people are not property, and therefore, they should not be owned. The way we raise our boys in understanding life and women and relationship is also important. The way we see child protection, we need to really educate persons as to what child protection really means. And we also need to create the relevant child protection system. So as I close, Madam Presiding Officer, I want to reiterate to this Honorable House that this minority, we will continue to look at the issues relevant to the people, because one of the things about this minority is that we believe that whatever we come to this house with should really represent what the people are saying on the ground. And in our walks, you would see us from time to time, all across Tobago, walking and meeting the people. And this issue of domestic violence and child abuse is one that we recognize is very real. In fact, the NGOs are crying out for support, and we will posit to you that we provide the strategies, we provide the systems that can bring support to both the perpetrators and the victims of these incidents as to ensure we have a safe Tobago, we have a Tobago where our children are protected, we have a Tobago where our women are protected, and we have a Tobago that our men feel empowered. I thank you.